One that is a bit more two-way is services like 311. And we now have this system in Edmonton. It's been quite developed in other jurisdictions. And it's used for both sharing information, but it's predominantly used for gathering information from citizens. So you can go on the website and you can report potholes, for instance. That's an online feature of 311. Or you can call 311 and report that there's a tree down in a path somewhere or something like that. So 311 is a way that the city can gather information from citizens. And then I think the next step that we're not doing enough of yet is actually making the results that come in and the data that is captured through 311 available back to the community to be able to build some interesting things with that. And I'll come on to open data and applications in a minute. But I think 311 is really interesting, and we've seen it used for I guess more public engagement type approaches as well. So you may recall when the arena discussions were quite heated, the Oilers actually encouraged all of their fans to pick up the phone and call 311 and register a vote of support for that project with the City of Edmonton, which is probably, I think it's fair to say, an unintended use of the service. But it was quite effective, and it was something that was relatively easy for a citizen to do. So if I care about the arena project and I want to get engaged in that, how can I have an impact? How can I get across my feeling on the project and tell somebody that I think this is an important thing to have downtown, for instance? Well, for a lot of people, picking up the phone, calling 311 and mentioning that was enough. And so it was an opportunity to use technology to capture that information, even if the city probably wasn't prepared for it. And then what happens to all the people that are reporting concerns and things like that? I still think it's a bit of an interesting use case. One of the key things around public engagement that I think technology can help with is that invitation process. So when we did the next gen engagement strategy, one of the things we identified is that it's not enough to just have an opportunity available to people. You need to go the next step and actually make the invitation to have them come, whether that's in person or whether that's online. And how do you do that? Well, if you've got relationships and you do it a little bit more one-on-one, that's obviously really effective. But there should be other tools that people can use to find out about the opportunities that are going on and to determine if it's something that they want to get engaged in. So this is a screenshot of the city's public engagement calendar. So you can go on here and you can find any of the open houses or workshops or things that the various units of the city have planned and have ongoing. This is a good step. This is a good use of technology because I can subscribe to this. So I can click on the link at the top there and get the iCalendar feed and have that show up in my Google Calendar or in my Outlook calendar or in an application that I've built. So that's a good step. But we could probably do a bit more here. Like, for example, only tell me about events that are related to transit, let's say. There's no good way to do that with this system at the moment. But it shouldn't be too hard, right? When we put that information in there, we're putting it into a central calendar. We should be able to tag it and organize it a little bit so that I don't have to see everything. I can see the ones that are most interesting to me, or maybe based on where I live, right? So that's another way that technology can be really useful. During the election, one of the things I built was a voting station tool. So you could go onto a web page and automatically it would get your location based on your mobile device's location, or you could type in an address and it would tell you where in the city you're located, who your candidates were and where your voting station was. So it's really easy then for people to be able to focus and get the information that they need based on what's contextually relevant for them. And I think we could do more with the calendar in that regard. The other thing that's interesting to me about this calendar is that it may be fixed now, but until very recently, none of these events showed up in edmonton.ca/calendar, which is where all the other events show up. So, the fun stuff, the stuff that happens at the Mutart Conservatory or the Valley Zoo or any of those kinds of events, they're in the calendar. This is completely separate. Why don't we want the same people to have access and have the information about those events, right? I think we do. So I think we could do a bit more there. I think what's really interesting about the world we live in today is that all of us walk around with really, really, really smart, intelligent devices, and we can make greater use of those. One of the ways that we did this was during the election. I worked on Mayor Iveson's campaign, and door knocking, as you know, is a big part of any campaign. And we decided right at the beginning that when we were going to go out door knocking, we didn't want to have to record answers on paper and then have volunteers back at the office type all that in so that we could do something with it. We knew that we had technology available to allow us to do that in a much more efficient way. So we worked with this local company called TouchMetric, and they have a product called Surveyor. And Surveyor is a little iPhone application that basically lets you do a survey. So what we did is we had volunteers, when they went out door knocking, usually go in pairs, and they'd go up to the door and they'd have the conversation like they would normally, except one of the volunteers is recording the answers on the mobile device. And right away, those answers are being sent back to the central database, and then I was able to run analysis on that every single night to give us the latest data on that door knocking. So it was a cool use of mobile phones that everybody's got and a bit of local technology to do a bit of engagement in a different way. Lots of other campaigns use paper, and there's nothing wrong with paper, but it allowed us to be a bit more efficient and a little quicker at responding to people as well. So if you're at the door and somebody wanted a sign, we could check that off in the app, and right away an email was sent to a different volunteer whose job it was to deliver a sign to that house. So it was a really kind of interesting use of technology, and I think we could do a lot more with this. Another thing I'm involved in is the Mayor's Celebration of the Arts. So we do that event. It's coming up in April to celebrate local artists and performers. And last year we experimented with a bit of an exit survey using this technology. So when people came to the event and then they left, we had volunteers in the lobby that would corral them for a couple of minutes and ask them a couple questions and answer those questions using the mobile device, which makes it a heck of a lot easier than having to do paper. And to me, it's one of those interesting things that I've had conversations with people at the city about over the years. So for example, you go to a public open house or something, and there's a comment form, right? So you fill out the piece of paper, it's the comment form, you drop it in the box on your way out. Like, what happens to those comments? Somebody's like sitting somewhere, going through those comments, typing them into a spreadsheet. Like, how efficient is that? And what a mind-numbing job. I wouldn't want to do that. I feel bad for any of you if you've had to do that. And I ask a question like, well, why not include tweets? There's a hashtag. Why not include the tweets that people sent out during that event? In a way, it's no different. Somebody has to sit there and go through the tweets and decide which ones can be pulled in and which ones are applicable, except that we can apply technology to do that way more efficiently, right? So you can actually have some software or some service or some code that runs that does that analysis and aggregation for you. So finding those opportunities, I think, is really interesting. I'm going to go through some of these rather quickly. So this is one that the city's using right now to do public engagement on infill in residential areas. So they're using this online site called engagingedmonton.ca, which is, I think the company's called Peakocracy or something like that, that they run this site, and it's an online tool to allow the city, in this case, to gather feedback from citizens to be able to go on and answer questions and give feedback. And we've seen other ones, so the Winter City strategy, which I'm a big fan of. I love what they did with their IdeaScale site. So they deployed this site run by IdeaScale, where Edmontonians were encouraged to go in and put ideas so they could suggest something that would help make Edmonton a better winter city. And what was really cool about it is other citizens could then go vote on those and leave comments. And so you quickly get this really rich collection of feedback and input from citizens that would have been really difficult, I think, to gather if you were just in a room. If we all sat around a table and I said, what are some ideas around Winter City? You might be able to suggest some, and those might go into a report somewhere, but then they're kind of lost. Whereas, an idea goes up on here, it's got 47 votes, a skating trail in Rossdale. And everybody who's been to this site has seen that idea, right? Which is different than broke into groups, got some feedback, it went into a report. Not everybody's going to see that. So I think that's a really interesting use of technology as well. So social media I have to talk about a little bit. Usually when I talk about social media or I do a presentation on social media, I have a slide up at the beginning that says something like, think about social media in terms of people and relationships, not about tools and technology. So I think we get hung up on the latest services or the latest applications and that kind of stuff. And really, I think your approach to social media should be informed by the fact that it's basically a tool to build and maintain relationships and to talk to those people. Way more efficiently than maybe other methods, but that's really what it's about. And I wrote this post back in 2010 about social media in the city. And I think it's still pretty relevant today that it's social media is helping to facilitate a new relationship between government and citizens, and it improves the city's social capital. And I feel pretty strongly about that still. I think that's why I still get invited to come out and do presentations about social media for organizations. Everybody recognizes that there's has really precipitated a huge change, and they want to try and wrap their heads around it. But social media plays an important role. So speaking about social media, what are some of the things we can do? Well, a blog is an example of social media. So this is a post that I wrote last week about the future of transportation in Alberta. So the province right now is kind of going on a bit of a roadshow around the province and asking citizens for input on what they think a strategy for the future of transportation in our province should look like. So if you're able to go to one of those meetings, that's fantastic. You can, in theory, provide some feedback to the people in the room, and it'll get captured and included as part of the process. I wasn't able to go to the meeting, so I looked for other opportunities to provide some feedback. And they have a Word document that you can download and fill out and send back to them. And that's the way currently that you can provide some feedback. Okay, it's better than nothing. It's not the best way to do it. Like, it's not a site where I can just go and log in and type in some comments and see what other people have said, but it's a starting point. But what about this? I took that Word document, I looked at one of the first questions. It was about the vision statement that they had proposed, and I said, well, I don't really like this vision statement. I get where they're going with it, but let me make a suggestion. I wrote a blog post about it. Will this blog post get included as part of the input that they gathered from citizens for this project? Probably not, because it's not been considered as part of their plan for gathering input from citizens. But there's some really rich information that bloggers and other people put out regularly. All we need to do is try and capture it. Social media, I think we often think about Twitter, and I think it can be used on a more specific basis where you put out a hashtag or something and you ask somebody a question and you gather the responses. But on the other end of the public engagement spectrum, where we're trying to maybe inform or just encourage dialogue about a particular issue, I think it can be quite effective as well. So this is the 4lrt.ca website that the city launched recently. This is all around encouraging people to promote expansion of LRT, and to some degree it looks like it made a difference because we finally got some funding from the province yesterday. But it's a really interesting use of social media to both inform and encourage people to share with their peers and their circles information about expanding the LRT and what we're trying to do there. So there's some videos that went out, and then people tweet about it, and if you go to the website, because you've seen one of those tweets, you get to learn much more information. And then there's a very simple, like, yes, I agree, put my name down as someone who supports LRT, which for a lot of citizens is all they have time for or all they're willing to do, right? They don't want to actually go to a meeting. They want to be able to register their support easily and quickly and move on. Going back to the Google Hangouts thing with the virtual town hall, I just wanted to show this. This is what we did during the election, myself and a couple other bloggers, where we did like a YEG vote hangout. So every, I think it was Thursday nights, we did it for an hour. We went on live on our webcams in our houses, dogs and all, and talked about what was happening in the election, and then we encouraged people to ask us questions or communicate with us on Twitter. And it was pretty interesting because we had an idea about what we'd talk about, but then we'd delve into other topics as it came up from people. So I think it's kind of a neat approach, and I wanted to highlight it just because the technology has come so far. Whenever you see those crazy things on TV with like the video doesn't work well, or the conferencing is confusing, I'm like, how does that happen? Like, I'm on the video calls with people every day, and it's perfect. It's great quality. And Google Hangout is one of those amazing tools that makes that possible. So I think that's an interesting opportunity that we could explore as people who do public engagement. I have to talk about open data. I've been a big proponent of open data at the city and the province and other places. And there's some really great progress that's been made in Edmonton over the last number of years. There's over 400 data sets in both the provincial and the city's data catalogs. And so what open data is taking information in a structured form, putting that into, I guess, a bit of a database so that other people can download that data or access that data and do things with it. And do things with it could be building an application, it could be doing a visualization, any of those kinds of approaches. And so, open data, I think, is something that's still fairly early stages, but we could do some really interesting things with it. So, for example, when we're talking about, the downtown CRL, the community revitalization levy that's going to fund the arena and some of the, the development around it, there's a boundary, which means there's a map somewhere, and somebody's drawn a boundary on the map. Whenever it comes up at City Council or anything like that, there's a PDF document that contains that map. But that means absolutely nothing to a developer like me. right? What are the actual boundaries so I can put that on a Google map and show you how does that relate to other things that are going on in the area? Or what is the actual size and area of this thing? If the data was made available in an open data catalog, people could download that and have a totally different discussion about that project than just looking at the map in a PDF, right? Part of the reason that they don't do that is because it's not required, right? There's no requirement that that data is made available either by the province or the city or in any part of a CRL process, but I think it's a really big missed opportunity that we could have explored to do some more interesting things with open data. This is a picture from a couple weeks ago. International Open Data Day was February 22nd, and the public library in Edmonton hosted a hackathon to promote it. And it was really cool. You had all these people that care about open data, some that knew quite a bit about it, like me, and others that were brand new to it, and they got in the room together and they talked about some ideas for open data and then built things with it. And we voted at the end of the day for by applause, which project was the coolest or made the most effort during the day. And the project that won was this tree map that this guy built. So he went onto the data catalog, found all the tree information, all the trees that the city of Edmonton's planted throughout the city, and he put that onto a map, and you could see the different kinds of trees on the map as you moved around the map. So, I mean, it was really neat to me, because trees are one of the data sets that I requested early on just because other cities have it, but what am I going to do with trees? But here's this guy who's really passionate about trees, who's now able to interact with that topic in a totally different way. So that was really neat. And then just a couple more examples, going back to the mapping idea. I, on my blog, have been somewhat critical of the arena plan and things like that, and one of the questions I always have is, what are we going to do with Northlands? What happens with Rexall Place, right, if we build this new arena? How could we do a public engagement around that topic to gather feedback from people? Well, this was sent to me by someone who reads my blog, which I was blown away by. He's like, you know what, I've seen your question and here's what I suggest. So he went on Google Map Maker, which is a pretty cool tool, and he was able to draw on the map different areas, and he talks about in the description what those areas are and what he thinks should happen to them. I mean, this is a really, really interesting application of technology. Imagine if we had a public engagement opportunity that really encouraged this kind of thing, rather than come to the meeting on Tuesday night and tell us what you think about Rexall Place. There's a lot more you can do with this. So I really love this example. And it highlights that he's just a citizen who cares about his city, who wants to get engaged. He did this in his own time. It's not like he got paid to do this or anything. So I think that's interesting. This is an extreme picture, but I just couldn't not include it. I was looking for a fallen tree example. Back to the 311 idea and gathering input from citizens on a more ongoing basis. I think citizens want to feel like they're engaged, not just on a project, but more generally. And one of the ways they can do that is telling people about the things that they see, in their city every day. So that's reporting potholes. Or, for example, let's imagine you're walking down a path in the river valley and there's a tree that's fallen down and it's completely, fallen over. It would be really cool if you could quickly snap a photo on your phone, send that off to the city, it's geotagged, it goes into the system, other people can see where that is, and the city now has it registered as something that they can go and address. Is that public engagement? I think it is, right? I think that citizen's going to feel much more engaged in their city having had the opportunity to report something and actually see that something happens with it than they would have otherwise. And technology, all of us, like I said, walk around with these really advanced phones that have geolocation built into them. So we could do some pretty interesting stuff. So that's maybe a little future looking, and this is, I think, even more future looking. I love this idea of this air quality egg. So sensors and those kinds of things are getting so cheap and inexpensive now that you can put together these little sensor networks yourself really easily. So is this engagement? I think this is maybe a little bit of the future of engagement. You can buy this air quality egg, put it out on your deck or your balcony or in your backyard or whatever, and it'll wirelessly send information off to the cloud about the air quality around where you live. Right? So you can now contribute to gathering information about the air quality across the city if you wanted to, by purchasing this inexpensive little device, plugging it in, and joining the cloud, so to speak. And I think this is something we'll see way more of as sensors become so inexpensive, and people can be a bit more passively engaged, I guess, right? Plug it in, Don't worry about it. It's there, but you're contributing to, gathering information and providing input and helping people that are going to use that data to make decisions. I think that's really powerful. Like if I could plug in a whole bunch of sensors in my house that would go off to the city so they could gather information about 104th Street where I live to, make different decisions about it, how cool would that be? I don't even have to think about going and telling somebody about it. It just happens automatically. And so I wanted to show that as maybe an example of where technology could go with public engagement. So my last thought quickly, and then I'd love to hear some questions and stuff, is just that I think citizens want to get engaged. I think more often than not we make it too difficult for them to get engaged, and I think we can use technology to both invite them and make those opportunities much easier so that they do have the ability to both learn about things that are going on in their city and actively contribute back to it.